Okay, well, welcome everybody. My name is Brad Waldschmidt. I'm an engineer that works with the Nashville Department of Transportation on the Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program. We really appreciate everybody joining to talk about Grace Point Lane. And really, we're talking about Grace Point Lane between Battle and Oak Trail Drive. Closer to Battle, it's part of Crothers Road, and then it turns into Grace Point Lane. And then at the all-way stop at Oak Trail Drive, that's where the project stops. So I just wanted to kind of clarify the road, and we'll cover that. What we'd like to do tonight is go through about a 12 or 15-minute presentation. This is the second meeting for Grace Point Lane. We want to talk about traffic calming and also present a more detailed design that we have prepared to sort of present to you all, get some feedback, answer questions, and then talk about next steps, which there'll be a vote in the future for those of you who have owned property along the corridor. So before we get going, I'd like to introduce or have my colleague Jordan introduce himself. Jordan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Lipsy. I work alongside Brad Smith with NDOT, and I appreciate you people being here today.
Excellent. Thanks, Jordan. So what we'd like to do is, again, kind of go through about probably more like a 15-minute presentation. And we'd like to ask everybody to do one of two things if you have some comments or questions. The first is if you want to come off of mute at the end of the 15-minute presentation, we're going to stay on as long as we need to kind of just answer questions and have some discussion as needed after the presentation. The second way you can provide a comment or question is at any time, even during the presentation, if you want to instead type that in the chat. I think in the bottom right of the WebEx screen, there should be a chat box. So people are free to also use that option if you'd like to provide a question or comment either way. So with that, let's go ahead and get going. And Jordan, I'm going to ask you real quick. I'm going to share my screen. I always like to make sure that technology is working. Can you see the title slide okay, Jordan?
Yes, I can.
All right, appreciate it. I'm going to assume everybody can see it just fine then. So we are here to talk about Grace Point Lane, and again, to the west, Crothers Road over to Battle. We'll have some maps to show and make sure everyone knows the part we're talking about. So real quick, what is traffic calming? We are focused, the Neighborhood Street Traffic Calming Program is focused on residential streets where we're looking for physical solutions to encourage lower speeds, lower vehicle speeds. So that speed reduction is what we're looking for. And we do that through applying a 3E of traffic calming approach. The first E is education. This meeting and the first meeting we had several months ago are great examples of that education. We, working with NDOT and as the engineers, can kind of talk about some solutions that will work for lowering vehicle speeds. But you all live out here. You're the experts of your street and the experts of your neighborhood. So together we make a really good team to be talking about traffic calming. The second E is absolutely part of traffic calming. It is enforcing the posted speed limits along a street. It's very important to enforce. However, it's something that is not really in the Nashville Department of Transportation's jurisdiction. But what NDOT does have jurisdiction over is the engineering of roads, things that can be done to streets to try to reduce vehicle speeds. Safety and this idea of a vision of zero deaths on our streets is a big reason why Metro Nashville funds the traffic calming program. If the unfortunate crash happens or a pedestrian is hit by a vehicle and that vehicle is traveling at 25 miles per hour, that pedestrian has an 89% chance of surviving that. But if you look to the far right, if that same car is going 45 miles per hour and hits a pedestrian, that pedestrian only has a 35% chance of survival. Now, we do not want any pedestrians being hit by any cars, but if the unfortunate thing happens where a pedestrian is struck by a moving vehicle, we really want to lower those vehicle speeds along a corridor like Grace Point Lane and over to the west, Crothers Road over to Battle. So that's one reason why traffic calming is so important. Many streets have been applied for traffic calming. As of last August, over 500 streets in Metro Nashville had been applied for. And back in August, the highest number ever during a selection cycle, 85 streets were chosen for traffic calming program. One of them being this Grace Point Lane that we're talking about here today. Real quick, outside of traffic calming, we do like to make sure everyone knows about Hub Nashville. If you have anything that is not traffic calming related. It could be you think there need to be more stop signs, or there's a traffic signal not doing something that it should be, or there's a storm drain inlet that's blocked. Anything like that, you can call 311, or you can go to hub.Nashville.gov. We just like to make sure if there's something that Metro Nashville needs to know about, this is a great resource. We just like to make sure everyone knows about that. But if it's about traffic calming, Jordan and I here tonight, we are here for you. We got you covered on that. We just like to make sure everyone knows about this. So real quick, just to make sure we know the corridor we're talking about. Um, part of it is labeled, I believe, Carruthers Road, and part of it is labeled Grace Point Lane. But that area highlighted in yellow is what was applied for on the traffic calming application. So that's what we're looking at. So basically from Carruthers Road over at Battle Road, all the way through Clement Street intersection, and then over to that all-way stop where it's Grace Point Lane and Oak Trail Drive, and then I think Carruthers Road goes on to the south, and then that all-way stop is where the project ends. Just I know since there's a name change, apologies for over communicating. Just want to make sure we're being clear on that is kind of the project that was applied for. So that's the project we're looking at for traffic calming. Now, what we want to do is we want to cover the recommendations for traffic calming, and then we're going to move on to a very more detailed design. We are recommending these speed cushions along the street. They are rubberized devices at their highest height off of the pavement. They're 3 inches. These are 4 examples of speed cushions elsewhere in Nashville. They would look very similar to this. And the thought is that all vehicles will be having to drive over these and that they would reduce vehicle speeds whenever a vehicle is going over. You do see there's a bullet on here that says reduced impact to emergency response vehicles. Anytime we want to put something vertical, all vehicles are going to have to drive over it. It's going to reduce vehicle speeds. Well, that includes emergency response vehicles who sometimes might need to get somewhere pretty urgently. What these speed cushions provide is if you can see there's some gaps on the edges in these photos and gaps in between the speed cushions. Vehicles like fire trucks and ambulances have a wider wheelbase on the front axle, so they can actually straddle the speed cushions, which impacts them a little less than if there were no gaps. The back tires, there are more tires back there because of all that weight, so they do touch the speed cushions, but they usually are touching the ramped up parts on the side. Still a little bit of a less impact than if if the rubberized was going all the way across without the gaps. So that is one of the things that we were proposing as part of the traffic calming solution. And this graph just demonstrates that NDOT, there have been some before and after studies. We're seeing lowered vehicle speeds once speed cushions get installed with other streets that before and after studies for speed have been done. So we do see that. Another thing we're recommending is the addition of the white line pavement markings. There are some areas where we want to kind of just visually narrow the driving area along the street. These 2 photos are also in Nashville. Before the traffic calming program, the white edge lines were not there, and it just seemed a little wider for a driver or a motorist. And so adding the white lines kind of narrows the driving area, which combined with speed cushions can also help reduce vehicle speeds a little bit. We will show that in more detail as well in the design. Another thing that we're proposing, not so much the picture on the right, well, I guess a little bit, since chicanes and bulb outs, some of the intersections along this corridor really just are a very large area of pavement. And so what we wanted to do is, along with the narrowing theme, along with the speed cushions, we wanted to propose some narrowing with some additional white pavement markings, not crosswalks, but white line pavement markings and some of those vertical white bollards. And on the right, you see it's called a chicane, where a vehicle somewhat has to turn their steering wheel just a little bit to kind of stay straight. So we want to kind of show that as well. So those are the 3 features that we're proposing. Now, what we want to do is talk through what we're proposing. This is very zoomed out. We have, I think the design's about 6 slides. This is the zoomed out version. Then we're going to zoom in a little closer, and then we're going to zoom in even closer. So just kind of bear with us as we kind of talk through this. Between the intersection of Battle Road and Carruthers Road and the all-way stop of Grace Point Lane and Oak Trail Drive, we are currently proposing 5 locations of speed cushions. And in the next couple of slides, we're going to show very specifically where we're proposing those. We choose the number based on looking at the spacing between the ends of the corridor and each speed cushion. We don't want to put them too close and it feel like a grocery store parking lot. We also don't want to place them too far apart, or if there's any motorists that unfortunately still want to try to speed, we don't want to give them too much distance between the cushions to try to pick up that speed. So that design approach is what yielded these 5 speed cushion locations. We're also, you can't really see it on this graphic, the more zoomed in ones, we will. We're also proposing those wide edge lines to kind of narrow the road along parts of the corridor, not all, but parts. And then it's kind of hard to see, but there's 2 kind of blue circles with a capital letter B right in the middle there. One's at the eastern intersection of Fairchild Circle, and the other's at the intersection of Clement Street. Those are some of those bulb outs. What we noted is we are not able to install speed cushions on very steep hills because it's too steep of a hill. When they bolt the speed cushions in, it's not made for a certain steepness of hill. And so what we noticed with our field work and our design is right there, and you all know because you live out here, that eastern intersection of Fairchild Circle and Clement Street, it's in the middle of a horizontal curve. It's a really wide area of pavement. If you're going eastbound, you're going downhill. We were really trying to think through if we're not able to put speed cushions on that steep hill, what can we do? And that's where we want to kind of talk through that bulb out, but also some chicane where there's a little bit of a turn. So that's kind of the setup for what we want to go to. We're going to zoom in, start on the west side at the intersection of, I know it's labeled Grace Point Lane, but really there it's Battle Road at Carruthers Road. We want to start there. On this sheet, we're proposing 2 speed cushion locations. One is essentially almost in the middle of Battle Road and the western Fairchild Circle intersection. That's where that first set of speed cushions would be based on this design. And that second set is kind of right in between the 1988 and 1992 addresses there along Carruthers. That's where that second set of speed cushions would go. And then it's kind of hard to see, but don't worry, we will be zooming in a few sheets. You can see some black lines here at that eastern Fairchild Circle intersection. That's one of the locations of that kind of that bulb out and that chicane where if you're going eastbound from Battle, as you all know, cars are starting to turn your steering wheel to go down a horizontal curve, starting to go downhill, the pavement gets really wide. That's what we wanted to focus on. So 2 speed cushions. We will zoom in a few slides to that eastern Fairchild Circle intersection. But let's go next to the rest of the corridor. Real quick, Clement Street on the upper left corner. Clement Street is not labeled. That's also a location of one of those bulb outs and chicanes. We will also zoom in closer in a few slides. But what we're also proposing is 3 additional speed cushion locations on this section between Clement Street and then the all-way stop over at Oak Trail Drive. The first, I'll start kind of the upper left. That speed cushion location is proposed kind of near the 1924 and 1928 addresses. The second set is kind of in front of the 1902, just west of the Pleasant Street intersection. And then that third set is near the 2101 address. It's kind of between Shady Pine Alley and Glenhaven Drive. Those are the third, fourth, and fifth speed cushion locations. Another thing, I know this may be difficult to see, with the width of Grace Point Lane and Carruthers Road, we wanted to sort of provide those white line narrowings that we mentioned, but that we didn't feel like there was enough width to do it on both sides. So what we were proposing is there's some notes kind of on the bottom here. We are proposing a 4 inch width white line along the north side of Grace Point Lane. So essentially the side that where the homes are, we're proposing that narrowing. Vehicles, we are not restricting any parking. We're not changing anything with the parking. It's a traffic calming proposed design to kind of narrow the driving area so that the cars are a little further away from the homes. That's the purpose of those white line narrowings that may not be coming through clearly, but I want to kind of demonstrate that. I think there's 3 more slides on the design. This is that Eastern Fairchild Circle intersection. And what we're trying to do is create that chicane where instead of the pavement widening out and there's a horizontal curve and there's that steep vertical curve, we wanted to add some pavement markings, and it's difficult to see, but some of those white vertical poles or flexible delineators to both narrow the area that cars should be driving in, but also to create that chicane effect where vehicles will have to kind of turn their steering wheel a little bit, uh, which we believe will help reduce the vehicle speeds. Um, this is something we definitely are open to kind of hearing some feedback on what the thoughts are here. But this is that Eastern Fairchild Circle on the bottom right. As we go off the sheet on the bottom right of this, that takes us to the Clement Street intersection, which we're going to move to next. And you can kind of see the East Fairchild intersection on the upper left where we just were. And then this next intersection is sort of more in the middle, again, not labeled, but that's the Clement Street intersection. Similar, where we're wanting to really add those bulb outs so that the area for moving cars is smaller and it creates that narrowing effect. And then as you go on to the kind of down and right on the sheet, you'll see eventually that kind of tapers off and stops. You can see that third set of speed cushions is shown just to give you some context. So that is a lot. We're definitely, when we're done with the presentation in about 6 minutes or so, absolutely willing to come back to hear comments or answer questions. For the speed cushions, this is sort of if you were floating in the air right over them and looking down, this is what they're going to look like. The one on the upper left is right near Battle, where there's that double yellow. And then all the others are more like the upper right corner. We do 3 speed cushions because we don't want to have a wide area of pavement where the cars who may still want to try to speed have a lot of room where they can kind of circumvent the speed cushions. So that's why we're proposing 3, so that the gaps aren't too big where cars can't try to do what they're not supposed to. So that's the design. Again, definitely can go back to it during Q&A. Want to talk about process and what the next steps would be. So you'll see the second meeting, that's what we're in right now, that kind of bottom colored in red a little bit. The next step would be an online ballot. Very cool. Metro Nashville, the traffic calming program, it starts with citizens in neighborhoods just like you all applying for traffic calming on a street. Then NDOT goes through the process, selects streets. We, the engineers, design something, working with you all. And ultimately, the decision on whether it gets built or not comes back to you all. There will be a vote where all the property owners whose property touches Carruthers Road and Oak Trail and Grace Point Lane between Battle and Oak Trail Drive will get a mailer ballot. It'll look a lot like what's in the upper left corner here. You will be able to go to a web page or use that QR code to take you to the web page where you'll get to vote. That voting web page will look a lot like the bottom left corner. You'll put your name, your address, you'll put a unique ID code. Everyone will have a different code on their postcard. That's how we just make sure that everyone is who they say they are during the voting. And in the future, in a few weeks, what the plan would be is that we will have a voting period open for 6 weeks. And the voters, at the end of 6 weeks, as the votes come in, after 6 weeks, we'll close the voting. We'll tally them. And if 2/3 of everyone who votes yes, then this traffic calming project will get built. But if that 2/3 of the voters do not vote yes, then the traffic calming project would not happen. So that is the threshold. And it is not of all the property owners who receive a ballot, it is of those who vote. So a non-response from a property owner doesn't help or hurt. It just simply isn't in the formula. This is a graphic that sort of identifies what properties physically touch Carruthers Road or Grace Point Lane between Battle and Oak Trail Drive. Now, a few things I don't think there's any businesses out here. Businesses aren't eligible to vote. Also, vacant properties or HOA-owned properties do not get a vote. So I know kind of that common area is technically selected there. The common area will not be receiving a ballot to vote. It is truly the residential property owners along this corridor who would be getting the opportunity to vote. And it is the residential properties that touch whether it's a side yard, front yard, backyard. They're the eligible voters. Again, HOA common areas not getting a vote, even though they're highlighted. We do exclude those when the ballots are sent out to those property owners. So really appreciate everyone's patience. That was a lot of information. We'd love to open it up to questions. We can definitely go back to other slides. I'm going to pause really quick. I'm going to ask my colleague, Jordan. I'm not able to see the chat box because of kind of the presentation here. So Jordan, have we received any questions or comments in the chat box yet?
No questions or comments at this time.
Okay, well, everyone feel free to either post a question or comment in the chat or come off of mute. Either way works fine. I see John Stern has raised his hand, so we'll start with John and then we'll go to the next person. Yes, John. Oh, John, I think you might be on mute still.
Having watched this wonderful process from its beginnings in the early 90s to now, I just love the way you guys have presented the final plan to this community. From what I see, it makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of challenges on Grace Point Lane, Carruthers Road, and the 5 sets of speed humps, as well as the markings, which visually narrow the streets. Those things work, and it makes sense. The only thing I'm wondering about is how can we, as a community, support the successful election process that's about to happen.
Yeah, that's a great question, John. We really, I think for the key is for the community and the neighborhood to make sure that the property owners and the eligible voters know about this and are educated. So I think really just making sure that everyone's aware. One thing I didn't mention, but John, I'd like to add to your question. This design that we just walked through, it is not on the NDOT website right now. But when the mailer ballots are sent out, the voting page, I'm going to go back real quick. The bottom left corner of the voting page, it's hard to see. There is a link where you can actually click to review the design. The design will be uploaded to the website when the ballots are sent out. So anybody who wants to review the design again, or maybe they're not here tonight, but they want to review the design before they vote, that'll be also an option. I just want to make sure I added that. But really just making sure everyone knows about the voting opportunity if they live along the corridor.
Would you mind emailing us a copy of the presentation tonight so that we can kind of step up and get going on this?
Sure. Yeah, I believe the recording will also be on YouTube, but I don't see a issue with also emailing it out. I'm not sure who the lead applicant is. Who I believe it might have been Eva.
Eva
So,
Stoney.
yeah, I believe I think Eva's who scheduled the meeting, so I could probably email it to Eva if she has a way to distribute.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Valerie, I know you had your hand raised, and I think after Valerie, there was another hand raised. Yeah, Valerie.
My concern is that I know you are opening the voting to people who live along that corridor. This is a community that's unique in that it's extremely walkable and a actual community of people that babies and dogs and people walk along that street all day long. It is not just the people that are on that street, which I understand that that's what you want to limit your voting to, but it affects a lot of people. I can't tell you how many times, I'm sorry, have yelled at people going 40 miles an hour on that strip of road, which is not a long strip of road. And the other concerns I have is that the four-way stop that's at, John, help me here, it's at Carruthers and Oak Trail. Is that right? Yeah. That is totally ignored a lot of times. I can't tell you how many times I've wanted to have a sign out there claiming, you're a 10, you're an 8, whatever, because you're not stopping. And I'm also concerned that because we have entities who need to get through this neighborhood, who have more voice, I believe, than we do, what are the odds that they are going to be able to override this if we vote on it? If we get everybody to vote, let's just say we get our 66%, then what's going to stop UPS, Amazon, the builder from still scrolling through here and voting against it and shutting it down? How do we know this will pass if we vote for it?
Right. Trying to make sure I got all three of your questions. But so the first is there we Metro and NDOT, there is the policy of only the property owners that touch the corridor.
Okay.
There have been enough gray areas where we kind of had to just kind of make a decision, and sometimes, you know, yeah. So understood. There's just a neighborhood and a community, and some people who don't physically live on the understood. But the best thing I can say is for those who are passionate, you can still reach out and you can still have a positive impact if you want to, for the those that can vote. I think the second thing is for the always stopped, it's very unfortunate to hear that people are not stopping. This is a common theme we hear in other neighborhoods, but it is very unfortunate. That does sound like an enforcement item. That second E, very important, but not something that NDOT can do to enforce the stopping. As far as the third thing goes, this traffic calming program has policies and procedures. It is set up so that if 2/3 of those who vote yes, it's going to happen. I think you mentioned UPS. If UPS doesn't own residential property out here, they don't get a vote. I think you mentioned the builder. I do not know if the builder owns any residential properties. If they own 3 or 4 properties, we limit it to 1 vote per residential property owner. So if one owner owns multiple properties, they cannot swing the vote. That's on any street in Nashville for traffic calming. So
Don't they own the land on the other side?
Yeah, so Brad, they own starting at the top of the intersection at Battle Road and Carruthers Road.
mhm.
They own the southern property. Actually, it's owned by 2 property owners, but we won't go into details. And then they own the strip along along Carruthers before it gets to Grace Point, and they own that big yellow piece down at Grace Point across from Clement on down to the intersection, down to what used to be the Carruthers Crossing. So, as well as they probably still own the property at the silos.
Are
So
any of the properties you just mentioned occupied with a residential dwelling?
they are not.
So if you look at the second from the bottom bullet, vacant properties are ineligible for voting.
Okay.
Wonderful. So that then applies to the top 2 properties on the northwest side. Only the first, you've got 3 pieces of property up there at the top of the photo. One is a strip along Battle Road, which has nobody living there. Then you have a piece of property that there is, it is agriculturally zoned, but there is a home there. And then the next property is not, does not have a residential structure on it. So only one of those 3 pieces would vote.
Yeah, we haven't done our evaluation, so trusting what you're saying, but yeah, if
Yeah,
it
sure.
that's why the process has that second from the bottom bullet. Vacant properties, there's no residential dwelling, they will not be receiving a ballot to vote.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank you,
businesses are
Valerie.
ineligible, so that helps as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, thank you for mentioning that, Valerie. Businesses like an entity that owns a residential property with a dwelling, they are eligible to vote. What that businesses are ineligible to mean is sometimes there's like a gas station on a corner, or sometimes there's a pharmacy, and actual like the land use is business. That's what that is intended to be. Those businesses are not eligible, but an LLC that owns residential property, they would be eligible for one vote. Does that kind of help clarify that, Valerie?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, excellent. And I have lost my hand raised viewing, so if someone else has raised their hand, please feel free to come off of mute.
I just had a couple things. This is Eva.
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to thank you for putting such a thoughtful design in place, hopefully. It's gone beyond at least my expectations. I thought it was kind of one or the other, the speed cushions or the marking. So I really appreciate you incorporating all the things.
Mhm.
Two other quick questions, or one question as far as the mention about the wheelbase for the emergency vehicles being able to kind of circumvent the speed hump in order to, maintain a little bit quicker speed. Do you know if the like UPS delivery vehicles are also able to do that, given the width between the cushions?
Right. That's a good question. I do not know what the wheelbase is for delivery trucks. It may be just as wide or it may be a little narrower. Honestly, not sure. But what I do know is that we do design the gaps between speed cushions so that no vehicles can shoot the gaps. But I'll be very candid. It's possible. It's possible that if there's other vehicles out there with a wider wheelbase, they might be able to also straddle the speed cushions. That's something we have a lot of internal dialogue on, because sometimes we consider something called speed tables that go across the entire width of the street without the gaps. But we try to be very aware of emergency responders. We want, so there's a balance, and there's not one, it's a balance, and we usually fall on the side of let's go ahead and do the speed cushions. So emergency response vehicles can get somewhere a little quicker compared to tables, but it's possible delivery trucks may be a little wider.
Okay, thank you. And Valerie, I definitely understand your concern as far as everybody in the community using Grace Point Lane. I hope that, given the fact that only residents along that road, be given the opportunity to vote, hopefully that would, persuade it to go higher than 66% in favor. I feel like other people that live, in other phases of the development may not use Grace Point Lane and certainly don't live across it. So they may vote negatively for this traffic calming. But I would certainly like to get together with you as far as maybe just even going door to door to make sure that we do talk with the neighbors and see and make sure that they are going to vote. And if they have any questions, if they're not on this meeting, we could certainly help answer them.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, Eva, is that it does probably, a door-to-door effort probably is in order here. And we could take the imagery that they produced here, which is excellent imagery, and make our case one-to-one. But that's great. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Brad, this is James. I live off of Grace Point, and really just had a question on, well, first off, I'll start off, I'm relatively new to this community. So this is the first presentation I've been to, and this looks really great. My only question is on those delineators. Do you know what color they're going to be, and do you have any illustrations of what that might look like?
Yes, they will definitely be white.
Okay.
And I'm going to go to one photo example. The picture on the left has some examples of what those white flexible delineators would look like.
Okay, got it.
Now I'll be very honest. I know the delineators will be white. Lately with NDOT, if you'll see the base, I think the bases where they're actually attached to the road are black here. I've seen some where the bases are black. I have seen some where the bases are white. So I'm not sure what color the base would be, but I know the vertical taller part would be white. And it's kind of hard to see as well, but at the top there's some white reflectors. So at night they kind of shine or appear a little more visible at night with the headlights.
Okay, got it. And that that would, I guess, stop people from making sharper turns or faster turns, or I guess I'm trying to understand the functional purpose of the delineators.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do, and it's really focused on that horizontal and vertical curve right there near the silo, near the Eastern Fairchild Circle and intersection of the Clement Street. intersection. What we're trying to do is just find a way to lower speed since that hill is too steep. We measured it. We can't put speed cushions there. So we wanted to kind of incorporate that bulb out. I'm gonna go back to the photo again. We want to try to find a way to incorporate the bulb out of that photo on the left with that chicane concept on the right, where the driver has to turn the steering wheel. We think the pavement markings alone would be helpful, but sometimes adding a little vertical, almost like a guide to the motorist, can help demonstrate what they're supposed to do, so it's not just the markings, especially if you're thinking going eastbound from Battle, you're driving, you're about to start turning your steering wheel to the right, going down that hill. Headlights might be kind of shooting, as the hill's going down, shooting over the pavement markings. If we kind of want to add those white flexible delineators to really guide the motorist of that narrowing and kind of where they're supposed to be going. Does that kind of make a little more sense?
It does, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And last and final question: how would you say that, I guess, impacts like the appeal or aesthetics of like a neighborhood? Because I'm just trying to like think back to it, like driving through like a Franklin neighborhood or any of the like, high end home areas. You don't really see any sort of delineators in the neighborhood, although they probably don't face any issues with speed so much. But that's just my concern would be the impact of the aesthetics of the community.
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is I'm an engineer, so I like to have very detailed answers. Probably don't have the most detailed answer. What I can say is, this will change some of the aesthetics. It'll be different. There'll be some black speed, if the vote passes, there will be some black speed cushions. There'll be some of these white markings and white delineators. Just as a counterpoint, we were attending a meeting last night for another street, traffic calming, and one of the comments was, we feel like our property values are decreasing because our street is being treated like a raceway. So it's sort of that give and take. There's not one right answer. That's the cool thing. Everyone gets to vote. Everyone gets to kind of decide what they value more and then vote on that. So we don't really have a detailed answer, but hopefully that context kind of helps some perspective.
It does, Brad. Thank you.
And James, we'd love for you to get more involved in the neighborhood. So, reach out to Ava or Stony, or any of us, and we'd love for your participation to be a part of this process, man.
Yep. Thanks, John.
Yeah, what other comments or questions does the group have?
Hey, this is Hannah. I have a question that's, I'm going to apologize for being late. And if you covered it earlier, hopefully it won't take but a second. For future growth of this neighborhood and trying to get speed addressed early on in the game before all the infrastructure goes in, do you have any ideas to help us try to navigate that or talk about that in the upcoming phases before things are solidified?
Yeah, that's a great answer. I'm probably going to speak very delicately on this because I know this is an area where there is an active UDO with development activity happening. And I personally am not as familiar as others on the development code and the, Metro UDO, plan. So my best recommendation would be to reach out to your council member and to the NDOT engineers who sort of handle that. We at the traffic calming program are able to sort of address traffic calming on streets that are built, a public right of way, and that kind of thing. But there could be opportunities, maybe to have more traffic calming incorporated during development. But I certainly am not the right person to speak to on that. But maybe council member and maybe some and other NDOT folks. That's kind of my best bet. Probably not the cleanest answer, but that's probably the best answer I can give.
It's okay. We're just trying to learn how to get into the pre-phases of things and get some of that support built into not having to, for that coming from the developer, looking at our community and the safety from that aspect, as opposed to after the fact and it being charged back to Metro. So just trying to do it on the front end and looking for guidance. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hannah.
I appreciate that because Hannah and John have been longtime members of the community, and they've seen how the traffic has affected the neighborhood in general. And while neither of them nor me live on that street, what happens in my case is that I'm on the diverting street. So if they can't speed on Carruthers, they're going to come down my street, Winding Creek, at the back of the community and speed down that one, which I can deal with that. But I'm with her. Whatever Hannah and John think about how this is going to affect the community makes sense to me because they're the long-term residents.
Yeah, I mean, that's valid. Absolutely valid. I did used to live on that street. And so I have seen it change from, oh, this will never be the connecting street, until it was the only connecting street. And I think that we've just seen the change with Waze coming in, and with Waze, it redirects everybody. And it's something that wasn't really foreseen. The technology always changes. And I just hope that we can all kind of evolve together in making this better. And the piece of that to me is to get the developers to understand that from the beginning. So
Amen to that. I don't, that's my fear, is that you can go forward with your process and the votes, but I've just seen that the developer can overrule a lot of things that we have voted on in the past. John, am I wrong here?
No, you're not. But NDOT has, over the last 2.5, maybe even 3 years, has changed a lot in reference to utilizing some of the tools that we need to be used in residential areas, like traffic circles. Um, they're incorporating them into situations where they would have normally put signalized lighting, which is not really rural in character as a base point. But um, if we could find the right person to talk to at NDOT, I think we could probably have a big positive impact on that. I hope.
Well,
I'm
it
not a
sounds,
Pollyanna, but
well, it sounds like a vote, and if that means door to door, that's totally fine with me. A vote will be our best bet to see where this goes, correct?
Yeah, I mean, the procedurally, the vote would be the next step. I'll just go back to the graphic just to kind of bring it up. You know, the property owners, residential property owners along the corridor will be able to vote. The voting results will determine whether the traffic calming design we've presented is built or not. Uh, so, and you know, the road we're talking about, Nashville, neighborhood street traffic calming program does not get implemented on privately owned streets. So, the fact that we're taught, even considering this area, Crothers Road and Grace Point Lane from Battle to Oak Trail Drive, is because I believe it is a public road. It is owned and maintained by NDOT, and so that's where the NDOT traffic calming procedure is what, you know, would occur on here with the voting process.
I have one more random question.
Yes.
Since our neighborhood is not fully built out, can the developer say or do anything against this vote if it goes for, if people say yes, they want the cushions, can they say or do anything to change that, as they still have a lot of construction vehicles that may utilize Grace Point, or is that a no-go because it is Metro's responsibility now?
So two thoughts. First of all, we have not seen that happen yet in the neighborhood street traffic calming program. So historically, I do not see that happening because we haven't seen it happen before. Secondly, we did spend a little more time between meeting one and tonight. Usually it does not take that long, but because this is part within kind of the UDO, we coordinated with more internal NDOT teams outside of the traffic calming team than we normally would to make sure we understood. Because from that first meeting, we heard of the feedback from the first meeting, we heard consult the UDO, check the UDO. So we really feel like we have vetted if there's anything that would not allow the traffic calming program to occur and be implemented on this. We have not heard anything to say that it cannot. So that we don't foresee that happening for those two reasons.
Perfect. I love hearing that. Thank you.
Well, and that's great, but in 8 to 10 months, I'm not seeing, even after that, I'm not seeing that this is not still going to be a primary road for building construction. To go through beyond on Carruthers to the site where they're building until they are able to construct their own roads for access. And that's my concern, is that they will somehow overrule this because they still need access to those big trucks, which can't come in any other way.
Except that they can come in off of Waldron Road. And when you talk about things like cement, Smyrna Ready Mix would likely be coming from, guess where? Smyrna. So you would normally see them coming down the terrible Waldron Road. I don't know about their other distributorships. I don't know about the wood fabrication, the prefabricated wood structures that they use, but it is a Metro Public. It is Metro Public roadway. I don't know, Valerie, how we can assure the rich and the infamous from putting their thumb on the scale. I think you're exactly right. We got to keep an eye out for that. Brad, do you have any ideas of how we can keep that from happening, or monitor as this thing moves forward?
You know, I struggle to answer that because you're asking how to stop something from happening that procedurally cannot happen. So you know, I don't want to be, I never want to say never, but you know, again, we have not seen a successful vote, traffic calming get installed, and someone cause it to be removed. I personally have not seen that. So, you know, that's really the best I can give you. You know, that the whole someone speaks loud and they get removed. That's not in the policy. It's not in the process. Haven't seen that happen. I think there's too much of a focus on vision zero and safety. Back to that slide of we want to be reducing vehicle speeds. We don't want any pedestrians getting hit. But if the unfortunate thing happens, we want to lower those vehicle speeds to increase chances of survival. And that's kind of what we think the traffic calming design is set up to do.
And
Thank
I
you,
hope
sir.
you're right, Brad. My thought is that if for some reason it doesn't go that way, you'll be hearing from us.
Understood. I certainly have not seen it, but I also can't predict the future, but haven't
And I know
personally
it's
seen it.
not your concern. It's just that we know that the builder has a lot more deep pockets than we do in terms of being able to run his trucks through here. And again, tractor trailer trucks cannot go up Waldron Road, John, and you know, that's a given. So there's only one way through here. And my concern would be we need to coerce him to build his own road to get here and not come through the neighborhood if that's what he's going to do. But that's a whole nother subject and not what you've proposed. And we appreciate what you proposed. I think it's a great workable solution. And I will work with whoever wants to go door to door and get the votes out there.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I put it in the chat, but if this vote is does not receive the 66%, is our traffic calming for this road completely dead, or is it something that would be revised in some fashion?
If the vote is not successful, speed cushions would not be installed, and that would be the end of that. There'd be no speed cushions. The white line narrowings, those may still happen because they're not a vertical measure. So the white lines that would be kind of narrowing the street a little bit, those would still happen, yes or no vote. The bulb outs, I'm not sure. I would need to coordinate with NDOT internally on whether those bulb outs at East Fairchild Circle and Clement, if those would be, if those would still happen with the no vote, or if those would get removed. So speed cushions would 100% be a no if the vote is a no. And I believe there's some sort of amount of time window for a no vote on a street, a certain number of months or years before it can be applied for again. It's in the policy somewhere, but I did not have that part memorized. I apologize. Yeah, what other questions or comments? And if there's other hand raised, I apologize again. I'm kind of limited on what I can see on my side.
Brad, I think it was a great presentation. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Now, real quick, I'm coming off a video. So I see Eva, you have a hand raised, and then I think a Joyce and a Julie have their hand raised.
Yeah.
Did anybody have a question or comment of those groups?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi, it's Julie. Thank you so much. I mean, unfortunately, I came in very late. I've been in and out of appointments and stuff, and I'm sorry. So y'all are having a vote. When is the vote, please?
So we will likely send the mailer ballots out to all the residential property owners who touch Carruthers or Grace Point Lane between Battle and Oak Trail Drive. We expect those will go out in 2 weeks. So next week is June 3rd through 7th. Likely the ballots will be sent out in the mail the week of June 10th through 14th. And then the vote would be open for about 6 weeks.
Okay. I am not on Grace Point. I am back off of Clement. I'm the one that keeps asking for the stop sign because I live back there, and people will run over us trying to cross Clement over to go over to the silos. So I'm back off of Morris Circle, or we're not going to get postcards.
Correct. If your residential property is not touching the road, you would not be receiving a mailer ballot to vote, but you could have influence by coordinating within the neighborhood and speaking or coordinating with the residential property owners that do touch the road, since they will have a vote. That's kind of what you can do.
Okay.
Julie, they are doing what he's calling bulb outs at the corner of Clement and Carruthers, which you missed.
Yeah, I saw a piece of it, but I didn't understand what that was. I saw the picture with the white sticks coming up, and there was another picture with a stop sign. I'm like, ooh, we gonna get a stop sign, but it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, that may be a less than ideal photo example. The traffic calming program will not be performing or preparing any stop signs. What I can easily go back and I'll try to make sure you can use technology here.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd love to go back and just kind of demonstrate. So this is the intersection of it's the Eastern Fairchild Circle intersection. What we're proposing is a lot of these black lines on the road are going to be pavement markings, white lines, and we're wanting to both narrow the amount of pavement for cars, and we're also proposing those white vertical flexible delineators to sort of further show that it's narrowing. And that's what we're proposing.
Is that the stick? Those white sticks coming up?
Yeah, that's another name for them, the white sticks.
Okay. Sure.
No, that's absolutely what they are. They're fancy white sticks. And then we're also.
On them.
And I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to go to the next slide, which is kind of here on the bottom right of the corner. I'm going to go to the next slide, which will show that this is it's not labeled, but this is the Clement Street intersection. We're also showing kind of that narrowing. It's very hard to see, but in addition to all these black lines, which will actually be white when they get marked, there's also some of those white sticks.
But that's great because that's plenty of visual for people to see and slow down. What about like crosswalk lines? Are y'all doing that? At least the white lines in the road that indicate crosswalk?
We are not. We usually typically in the traffic calming program don't do crosswalks, but we are leaving the gaps in those markings that we've been talking about. So if the neighborhood wants to go through Hub Nashville and request NDOT do crosswalks, we're kind of leaving the space for them, but we will not be doing crosswalks as part of traffic calming.
Okay, all right. That would still be nice because we cross that all the time. So that would still be good to have that visual there, because we cross that street all the time.
Understood. Yeah. The thought is that hopefully with the traffic calming and with the flex delineators and with the markings narrowing the width of the so-called crossing, that hopefully that would improve a pedestrian crossing's ability. That's sort of our thought.
That's great. I really appreciate what you've done. You've done a lot of work there. That is a lot of work.
Yeah, I say our team working with NDOT. I'll kind of repeat this area with the steep hill. we knew a speed cushion couldn't go here, but we knew this was a point when you, so yeah, we wanted to give something that we thought might work and want to see what y'all's feedback was. So we appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, looks good.
Brad, one more quick question. Sorry. Along with the
Yes.
email that you'll send me with the presentation itself, could you send me a link to that YouTube so I can get that out to people that were not on the meeting?
Absolutely. We can definitely send you, Eva, the presentation. I don't know. Usually it takes NDOT a couple of days, and I know we're coming up on a weekend, so it won't be in the same email. But once the YouTube video is posted, I can also send you an email with that link. Just know it may be a little delayed. That's one reason why we're not going to probably send the mailer ballots out next week. Kind of give that some time to get that video posted. But then thinking maybe then 2 weeks out is when the ballots would go. So Eva, you may see 2 emails from us for that reason.
It'd be great if you could send Eva the presentation. That'd be wonderful. That way we can get working on the internal communication strategy. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, there's a,
I have one more question, Brad.
Yes.
I'm going to override Hannah on this. So you're mailing out these votes, correct?
We were mailing out the ballots that
The
people
ballot.
can then go to the website to cast their vote on the NDOT website.
So will we also be able to email that website out to the people that live on Carruthers if they don't get it in the mail or they don't check their mail?
You could, but they won't have their unique ID code because each mailer ballot will have a different alphanumeric code. So what we encourage, there is a phone number that is on the mailer ballot as well. So whether people, for people that don't have internet, maybe that get the ballot, they can also call. We also encourage, sometimes things get lost in the mail. And so, that's where we think the mailer ballots will likely go out in 2 weeks. And if it's been a few weeks after that and you've learned that some people haven't gotten it, we just had an instance a couple of days ago where they got it and they lost it. So you know what? Like they emailed their council member, we got in touch and they cast their ballot over the phone with someone at NDOT. That kind of thing happens, and NDOT, we're definitely willing to accommodate that.
Hey Brad, I do have a question in the chat. Miss Joyce asked, do you have any feedback or data from neighborhoods regarding how noise levels are affected? And she had a comment after that. She says, I live at the corner of Grace Point Lane and Pleasant and work from home. She's concerned about more noise coming from vehicles slowing or going over and accelerating around the cushions.
Right. No, really appreciate that question. Yeah, there is a certain noise when cars drive over these rubberized speed cushions, without a doubt. And so, is it too noisy? That's really relative to each person on, whether it's, okay or not. So they will make more noise. They will definitely make more noise than tires going over smooth asphalt. That's definitely the case. I think the other side of that coin is that it will be reducing vehicle speeds. And so that's again why everyone gets the chance to vote, so they can kind of weigh what's important to them, and everybody can have the chance to vote. I will also mention that I'm going to do something real quick here, and I apologize. This is a little this is not part of the presentation, but I kind of want to go show it real quick. So Jordan, are you able to see the website I just pulled up here on my screen?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Let me pull it up. I'm gonna try now. Can you see it, Jordan?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So if everybody, if on your own time, if you go to a search engine, you type in Nashville traffic calming, it'll take you to this page. If you scroll down, there's a traffic calming tracker. And if you click on that, I just kind of want to show people this traffic calming tracker tool is map based, and it shows streets that have been selected. There's a whole lot of colors popping up. It shows streets that have been selected. It shows streets that have been applied for but not selected. It also shows streets where traffic calming's been implemented. And the benefit of that is that you can drive on some of these streets if you so choose to get a feel for what the speed cushions are like. I believe The blue sort of dashed lines represent streets that have speed cushions on them. So like right here, I believe this may be Culbertson Road that intersects with Nolensville. That street has speed cushions. There's also some kind of up here closer to Nolensville and Old Hickory and some up here. So just know this is a resource you can go to and check out your own. Just if you're curious to see what other streets, the reason I asked that is because the question was about sound. If people are curious, we like to inform people so they can go out, drive over them, or if you even want to stop and get out and listen to what it sounds like, just because these are some of the other examples where people can go check it out if they're so inclined. Great. What other thoughts or questions from the group? Okay. Well, we really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for taking the Thursday evening to spend with us here. So our action items, we'll be sending the presentation to Eva next week once this recording of this meeting we're at right now is posted on YouTube. We can also send that link to Eva. And then you can expect the residential property owners along the street can expect to receive the mailer ballots for voting probably 2 weeks out, that week of June 10th through 14th. Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it and hope you have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you, Brad.